Welcome to Skilltastic Training. In this video, you'll work through 10 scenario-based CAPM exam preparation questions designed to test your understanding of project management concepts, agile practices, and business analysis principles. For the best learning experience, avoid immediately looking at the answer choices. Pause the video if needed, think through the scenario carefully, and try to determine the best response before the answer is revealed. You can also pause the video at any point if you need additional time during the countdown or explanation sections. Keep track of your score as you progress through the questions and share your results in the comments below. Let's begin. Question 1. Project life cycles and processes. An energy company is developing a monitoring application for remote equipment. During planning, a senior stakeholder requests additional reporting features that are outside the approved scope. The stakeholder believes the changes are minor, but the project manager is concerned about schedule and resource impacts. What should the project manager do next? Your options are: A. Approve the changes immediately to maintain stakeholder satisfaction. B. Reject the request because the scope statement has already been approved. C. Evaluate the requested changes through the project's change control process. D. Ask the development team to implement the features informally to save time. The correct answer is C. Evaluate the requested changes through the project's change control process. The best response is to evaluate the request through the change control process. PMI recommends formally assessing proposed scope changes before implementation so the project team can understand impacts to schedule, cost, resources, and project objectives. Exam tip: CAPM questions involving unexpected scope requests often favor formal change control rather than immediate approval or rejection. Question 2. Predictive project controls and artifacts. A government road construction project has a planned value of $500,000, earned value of $420,000, and actual costs of $480,000. The project sponsor asks for an assessment of both schedule and cost performance. Which statement best reflects the current status? Your options are: A. The project is ahead of schedule and under budget. B. The project is behind schedule and under budget. C. The project is on schedule and over budget. D. The project is behind schedule and over budget. The correct answer is D. The project is behind schedule and over budget. The best response is that the project is behind schedule and over budget. Schedule variance equals earned value minus planned value. $420,000 minus $500,000 equals negative $80,000, meaning the project is behind schedule. Cost variance equals earned value minus actual cost. $420,000 minus $480,000 equals negative $60,000, meaning it is over budget. Both variances are negative, confirming poor performance on both measures. Exam tip: memorize the EVM formulas. Negative SV means behind schedule. Negative CV means over budget. These are commonly tested on the CAPM. Question 3. Adaptive approach suitability. A fintech startup is developing a mobile payment app in a rapidly evolving regulatory environment. Requirements are expected to change frequently as user feedback is gathered. The sponsor asks the project manager to recommend a delivery approach. Which factor most strongly supports recommending an adaptive approach? Your options are: A. The project has a fixed regulatory deadline requiring a detailed upfront schedule. B. The development team lacks experience with iterative planning and sprint ceremonies. C. Requirements are expected to change frequently and early feedback will drive product direction. D. All compliance requirements have been fully documented and approved before work begins. The correct answer is C. Requirements are expected to change frequently, and early feedback will drive product direction. The best response is that frequently changing requirements and the value of early feedback most strongly support an adaptive approach. PMI recommends adaptive methods when requirements are uncertain or likely to evolve. Stable, fully documented requirements actually favor a predictive approach, and a fixed deadline alone does not determine which approach is best. Exam tip. On CAPM approach selection questions, look for keywords like changing requirements, uncertainty, or frequent feedback. These signal that an adaptive approach is appropriate. Question 4. Iteration planning. A healthcare software team is midway through a 2-week sprint when the product owner requests 3 new features that were not in the sprint backlog. The development team warns that accepting them will prevent completing committed work. What should the Scrum Master do next? Your options are: A. Accept all 3 features immediately to satisfy the product owner and adjust team capacity accordingly. B. Protect the sprint backlog and ask the product owner to add the new features to the product backlog for future sprint consideration. C. Cancel the current sprint and restart planning to incorporate the new feature requests. D. Allow the team to decide individually which new features to accept based on personal capacity. The correct answer is B. Protect the sprint backlog and ask the product owner to add the new features to the product backlog for future sprint consideration. The best response is to protect the sprint backlog and ask the product owner to add the new items to the product backlog for a future sprint. PMI-aligned Scrum practice holds that sprint scope is fixed once the sprint begins. Accepting mid-sprint additions undermines team focus and sprint commitments. Canceling the sprint is an extreme measure not warranted by a scope request alone. Exam tip. When a CAPM question involves mid-sprint scope additions, the correct answer almost always involves protecting the sprint commitment and routing new requests to the product backlog. Question 5. Adaptive project controls and artifacts. A non-profit organization is using an adaptive approach to redesign its donor management system. The team uses a Kanban board, but the executive director wants better visibility on whether the release deadline will be met. Which artifact should the project manager recommend? Your options are: A. A Gantt chart showing all project tasks sequenced with fixed start and end dates. B. A detailed project management plan with a baseline schedule and change control log. C. A risk register with probability and impact ratings for each identified delivery risk. D. A burn down or burn up chart that tracks remaining work or completed work against the timeline. The correct answer is D. A burn down or burn up chart that tracks remaining work or completed work against the timeline. The best response is to recommend a burn down or burn up chart. These are standard adaptive tracking artifacts that show remaining or completed work against a timeline, giving stakeholders clear visibility into whether the team is on track. A Gantt chart and detailed baseline schedule are predictive artifacts that do not align with an adaptive approach. Exam tip. When a CAPM question asks about tracking tools for adaptive projects, look for Agile native artifacts like burn-down charts, burn-up charts, or velocity charts, not Gantt charts or baseline schedules. Question 6. Adaptive methodology components. A large energy company has 12 interdependent product teams using Scrum on a smart grid platform, but cross-team coordination is creating delivery conflicts and misaligned priorities. Leadership asks for a framework that supports program-level alignment while preserving team agility. Which framework is most appropriate? Your options are: A. Kanban because it uses visual workflow boards that can be shared across all teams simultaneously. B. Extreme programming, XP, because its engineering practices improve code quality across large team environments. C. A single enterprise-wide Scrum team to replace all existing teams and consolidate decision-making. D. Scaled Agile framework, SAFe, because it provides structures for aligning multiple Agile teams at the program and portfolio level. The correct answer is D. Scaled Agile framework, SAFe, because it provides structures for aligning multiple Agile teams at the program and portfolio level. The best response is to recommend SAFe, the Scaled Agile framework. SAFe is purpose-built for coordinating multiple Agile teams at the program and portfolio level through structures like Agile release trains. Kanban and XP operate at the individual team level and do not solve cross-team alignment problems. Merging all teams into one Scrum team is impractical at this scale. Exam tip. When a CAPM question involves multiple Agile teams that need to coordinate at a program level, SAFe is typically the most appropriate framework to recommend. Question 7. Requirements gathering methods. A government agency is developing a case management platform for social workers across 3 regional offices with varying workflows. Requirements must reflect field realities, and the timeline is tight. Surveys have been ineffective in the past. Which elicitation approach is most appropriate? Your options are: A. Distribute a detailed requirements survey to all social workers and compile responses into a draft specification. B. Conduct structured interviews and observation sessions with field staff from each regional office. C. Ask senior managers from each region to submit written workflow descriptions on behalf of their teams. D. Review publicly available case management standards and use them as the default requirements baseline. The correct answer is B. Conduct structured interviews and observation sessions with field staff from each regional office. The best response is to conduct structured interviews and observation sessions with field staff from each office. PMI recommends these techniques when requirements vary by context and written surveys have failed. Interviews allow the analyst to probe for nuance and capture the operational realities that managers or generic standards would miss. Exam tip. When a CAPM scenario mentions that surveys were ineffective or that requirements vary by operational context, look for elicitation methods involving direct stakeholder engagement such as interviews, workshops, or observation. Question 8. Requirements, validation and acceptance criteria. A healthcare organization has completed development of a patient intake portal. During user acceptance testing, clinical staff find that 2 features do not match the approved requirements. The development team believes their build is correct. The go-live date is approaching and the sponsor wants to proceed. What should the business analyst do first? Your options are: A. Approve the features for go-live to meet the deadline and log the discrepancies as post-launch enhancements. B. Ask the development team to rewrite the technical specifications to align with how the features were built. C. Escalate the conflict to the project sponsor and defer all decisions until executive guidance is received. D. Review the approved requirements documentation and acceptance criteria to determine whether the features meet the defined conditions of satisfaction. The correct answer is D. Review the approved requirements documentation and acceptance criteria to determine whether the features meet the defined conditions of satisfaction. The best response is to review the approved requirements documentation and acceptance criteria first. PMI establishes acceptance criteria as the formal standard for product readiness validation. In a healthcare context, skipping this step and proceeding to go live risks patient safety. Rewriting specifications to match the build retroactively compromises requirements' integrity, and escalating without analysis bypasses the BA's core responsibility. Exam tip. When a CAPM question involves a dispute about whether a delivered feature meets requirements, always look for answers that reference reviewing acceptance criteria or requirements documentation before making a delivery decision. Question 9. Business analysis across methodologies. A logistics company is shifting from a predictive to an adaptive approach for a new route optimization platform. The business analyst used to write detailed specs up front. Developers now want them involved in sprint planning and backlog refinement. The BA is unsure if this is their role. What should the business analyst understand about their responsibilities in an adaptive environment? Your options are: A. The business analyst role does not change between predictive and adaptive approaches because requirements must always be fully defined before development begins. B. In an adaptive approach, the business analyst collaborates continuously with the team, refining requirements iteratively throughout the project, rather than defining them all up front. C. The business analyst should continue producing full requirements specifications up front and allow the team to convert them into user stories independently. D. The business analyst should defer all requirements decisions to the product owner since adaptive projects do not require formal BA involvement. The correct answer is B. In an adaptive approach, the business analyst collaborates continuously with the team, refining requirements iteratively throughout the project rather than defining them all up front. The best response is that in an adaptive approach, the business analyst collaborates continuously and refines requirements iteratively rather than defining everything up front. PMI recognizes that the BA role shifts between methodologies. In adaptive environments, BAs participate in sprint planning and backlog refinement, contribute to user stories, and support just-in-time requirements rather than producing comprehensive upfront specifications. Exam tip. When a CAPM question contrasts predictive and adaptive BA responsibilities, remember that adaptive BA work is continuous and collaborative, not a one-time upfront handoff. Look for answers that emphasize iteration and team engagement. Question 10. Project life cycles and processes. An education technology company is building a new student assessment platform. The curriculum requirements are fully approved, but the user interface design is expected to evolve based on teacher feedback. Leadership is debating which delivery approach to use. Which approach would best fit this project? Your options are: A. A fully predictive approach because all requirements must be approved before development begins. B. No formal approach is needed since some requirements are stable and some are not. C. A hybrid approach that applies predictive methods to the stable curriculum requirements and adaptive methods to the evolving UI design. D. A fully adaptive approach because any uncertainty in one area requires iterative delivery across the entire project. The correct answer is C. A hybrid approach that applies predictive methods to the stable curriculum requirements and adaptive methods to the evolving UI design. The best response is a hybrid approach that uses predictive methods for stable curriculum requirements and adaptive methods for the evolving UI. PMI recognizes hybrid approaches as appropriate when different project components have different levels of uncertainty. A fully predictive approach ignores known UI uncertainty, while a fully adaptive approach adds unnecessary overhead to already stable requirements. Exam tip. When a CAPM scenario describes a project where some requirements are stable and others are uncertain, Consider whether a hybrid approach is more appropriate than committing entirely to predictive or adaptive. For more CAPM exam preparation content, practice questions, and project management learning resources, subscribe to Skilltastic Training.